Hello again, YouTube. It's time again for Sex in the Watchtower with your good friend, Sister Fister, and Carson, the Wonder Dog. Carson is an especially important guest on today's show because Carson just got fixed. He's still a very good dog. Aren't you, Carson? Aren't you a good dog? Oh, you're a good boy. I love you. So let's jump right in. Got your headphones on? Good. You're going to need them. The first article we're going to talk about today is from the Watchtower magazine in 1989. It's called Revolting Sexual Mores. Mores? Mores, ancient and modern. Why do we need an article in a religious magazine about revolting sexual mores? Why?
How detestable was the worship of Molech?
I don't know. How detestable was it?
Paulo Mantegazza writes in his book The Sexual Relations of Mankind that the Moabites of Bible times performed obscene sexual acts in chorus as they danced around the incandescent statue of Moloch. Oh my. After the 7 bronze mouths of the god had devoured the offerings of the faithful, offerings which consisted of flour, turtle doves, lambkins, rams, calves, bulls, and young lads.
Wow, these people must have been really athletic. I mean, how is it even possible to perform any sexual acts, never mind really obscene ones, while dancing in a chorus line? I mean, I can't figure out how that would work.
He adds, anyone who has read the Bible must remember the terrible curses hurled by Moses at those Hebrews who fornicated with Moloch.
Well, it sounds like Molech, let's just call him Mo. It sounds like Mo was made out of bronze. So how exactly could he fornicate with anyone? I mean, I think they meant that these people were fornicating with each other. I don't know. Then, the Jehovah's Witnesses apparently became very interested in the housing status of the ancients, because they wrote this article in the Awake magazine that same year, 1989. It's called, Why Jehovah Evicted Both Canaanites and Israelites.
None of the daughters of Israel may become a temple prostitute. Neither may any one of the sons of Israel become a temple prostitute. You must not bring the hire of a harlot or the price of a dog. New World Translation Reference Bible footnote, likely a pederast, one who practices anal intercourse, especially with a boy, into the house of Jehovah your God for any vow, because they are something detestable to Jehovah your God, even both of them.
Let me just say, I totally get not wanting your kids to become prostitutes and not wanting prostitutes doing business inside your church. But how did they get pederast from the price of a dog?
And even the male temple prostitute, New World Translation Reference Bible footnote, effeminate men, proved to be in the land.
My! You mean to tell me that gay people exist?
The prophet Isaiah warned them, on a high and lofty mountain you have set up your bed, and thither have you climbed to offer sacrifice. Behind the door and the side post you have set up your phallic symbol, sex organ image. And apart from me, you have stripped and gone up. You have distended your parts. You have bargained for those whose embraces you love, and with them you have multiplied your harlotries, while gazing on the phallus, male organ.
Well, that certainly gives new meaning to the phrase, go tell it on the mountain. I love that they had to explain what a phallic symbol and a phallus is by saying sex organ image and male organ. Like anybody doesn't know what a phallus is? Seriously, is there anybody that doesn't know what that means?
Women made images of sex organs and had relations with them, as we read. Didst make the images of the male and didst act unchastely with them, or as an American translation says, with which you played the harlot.
Oh my. Those are called dildos, and technically, so this surprises me because of how technical Jehovah's Witnesses are about sex and how different acts are classified. Technically, what they're describing is masturbation, not relations. I mean, you can't have relations with an inanimate object, can you? Anyway, ditto with the harlotries. I mean, they weren't getting paid. So why did Jehovah evict the Canaanites and Israelites? Oh, pick me, Sister Fister. Because they were all filthy sluts. And then, in 1989, the Witnesses released The Mother of Them All, the publication that dominated the lives of all the young ones from that year forward. The Blue Bomb. Questions young people ask. Answers that don't work. This book was touted as the one-stop shop for life lessons for young people and dealt with such vitally relevant topics as, why should I honor my father and mother? And why don't I like myself? And why won't the kids leave me alone? So yeah, a book for Jehovah's Witness teens. Now, there's a whole section of chapters in here about sex and morals, and another whole one about dating, love, and the opposite sex. Now, interestingly, the topics in the sex and morals section include two whole chapters specifically devoted to masturbation. And the last chapter in the section is called Honesty. Is it really the best policy? So in the moral section, the only thing not sexual is about whether or not you should be honest. I'm not really sure why this was in the sex section. Should I leave home? Yes. How can I make real friends? Stop being a Jehovah's Witness? How important are looks? Well, it depends. Are we talking in the kingdom hall or out? Why do I get so depressed? Because you're a Jehovah's Witness? Sorry. Should I quit school? No! No! What are you thinking? Are you crazy? How can I say no to premarital sex? Why would you do such a thing? Am I ready for marriage? Probably not. Drinking? Why not? That's a very good question. Does it matter what I read? Yes. Yes, it does. Don't read crap like this. Don't do it. Oh, here's a good one. Why can't I have a good time once in a while? Again, the answer is because you're a Jehovah's Witness, sweetheart. All right, let's dive into this mess, shall we? On page 181, the first chapter in the sex and morals section begins with a story about young Esther, who was at a doctor's appointment and amazed her practitioner with the declaration that she was, in fact, a virgin, like anyone cares. Of course, this is treated as an amazing occurrence because apparently, according to the book, it's very rare for even a 13-year-old to be a virgin nowadays. But they don't say how old Esther is, for one, and for two, most doctors actually refrain from moralizing about a patient's sexual status these days. Anyway, they keep going on about how exceptional it is for a young woman to be a virgin. So the underlying message here is that if you don't have sex until marriage, you'll be exceptional. Doesn't that seem a bit off to you? I don't know if this is how other Jehovah's Witness girls were raised, but I was raised to believe that your virginity is everything, and once you've lost it, you're kind of sloppy seconds. Gross.
Many youths have further found premarital sex to be bitterly disappointing. The result? Feelings of guilt and diminished self-respect. 23-year-old Dennis admitted, "It was a big letdown. No feeling of good or warmth of love as it was supposed to be. Rather, the full realization of how wrong the act was hit me. I felt totally ashamed at my lack of self-control."
No, guys. This is the direct result of continuous shaming and brainwashing. It's because they've been conditioned to think that sex is dirty and wrong and something terrible is going to happen to them if they do it. Now, I guarantee you that if they had not been conditioned in this way from birth, Dennis would have had a very different experience. First of all, there's actually no room for warmth or love if you have a feeling of impending doom and you think God's going to strike you dead or kill you at Armageddon now. And if you don't care about the person you're with, except in that they're a way to relieve forbidden sexual pressure, well, what exactly do you expect? Sex doesn't make you love someone. That's not even what it's for. You have to love them first and then have sex with them. Otherwise, it's just sex. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're going for, but you kind of have to manage expectations, you know? This experience actually tells me these people were never on the same page.
Confessed a young woman, "I came back to reality with a sickening thud. The party was over, and I felt sick, cheap, and dirty." Oh! It didn't make me feel any better to hear him say, "Why on earth didn't you stop us before things went too far?"
Whoa! Back that thing up a little bit. This is another result of conditioning. Full stop. And this guy is a grade A primo dickhead. Why is it her responsibility to stop things? I mean, if they're Jehovah's Witnesses, isn't he supposed to be the spiritual leader? Isn't he supposed to be the one in charge? So why is it her responsibility? And what would his reaction have actually been if she had said stop? Is he likely to have listened? Really? Now, I will tell you that often expectations are too high, way too high when you're a virgin. There's a lot of romanticizing that goes on, even in the real world, about sex and relationships. I mean, seriously, there are some really unrealistic expectations. Now, suffice it to say that I remember my first time quite vividly, and I was distinctly unimpressed. I mean, the guy had the patience of a saint, I'll give him that. But I was incredibly brainwashed, and I struggled with my feelings and all these heavy consequences that went along with them, and he wasn't exactly the most emotionally intelligent person on the planet either. You know what? It's not magic, people. It's a physical act. It can be magnificent, oh yes it can, but it can also be boring and bad. The thing is, when you're a normal person, you can walk away if it's horrible and free yourself and your partner to find someone else who can connect with them. But if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you only get one shot. And if you choose unwisely, well, too bad for you. Now, my mom had a friend in our old congregation who confided in her, and of course she repeated this to me because what the fuck are boundaries? She said that her husband told her on their wedding night that she was a disappointment after doing the deed and that she was married to him for decades after that. He was a real bastard. And she wasn't that far off herself. I mean, really. But damn, I would think that I would have had a comeback. You know, something like, oh, you thought you were disappointed.
Once a couple have had illicit relations, they often look at each other differently. A boy may find that his feelings for the girl are not as intense as before. He may even find her less attractive.
Why?
A girl, on the other hand, may feel exploited. Recall the Bible account of the young man Amnon and how lovesick he was over the virgin Tamar. Yet after intercourse with her, Amnon began hating her with a very great hatred.
Oh my God. This is just, I mean, of all the sexist, you know, it is just as likely that the girl would find that her feelings for the boy are not as intense as before. Or maybe the boy might feel exploited. Or maybe neither will feel any of that. Maybe they feel the same as they did before they screwed. Or maybe they'll be even more into each other. The Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to tell the young ones how they're going to feel here. They're fortune telling, and we all know their track record with that. Just no. I would also like to point out here that Amnon and Tamar are not really good examples. First of all, that situation was a rape. It was also incest. They were half siblings, for crying out loud. I mean, who the hell cares if he hated her afterwards? Do you imagine how she felt about him? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that wasn't love. Because they're comparing apples and tire irons here. This is not the same thing as a consensual relationship at all.
Often, a young couple do not plan to have sexual intercourse. In most cases, this occurred because a couple engaged in petting or stimulating touching of intimate body parts. Confessed one unwed mother, "To me and most of the kids I know, it just kind of went a little bit further each time, and finally, you aren't a virgin anymore." You start out to do a little petting, and before you realize what is happening, you can't stop.
Oh, little unwed mother, yes you can. Yes you can. You can stop. You didn't want to stop. So say what you mean, sweetheart. If it's good, you don't want to stop. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're prepared, everyone's consenting, and of legal age to do so. I mean, if you're doing the horizontal polka, then it's your responsibility to consider contraception. If you don't, and you get pregnant, then it's nobody's fault but yours. Also, none of these people really plan to have sexual intercourse. I mean, sure, you're always going to hope that it'll happen if you're dating, but nobody calls up their crush and says, "Hey, let's engage in some petting and maybe some sexual intercourse this evening." This is just not usually how it works, especially among religious people. You know, but think about the underlying lessons here, though. You can't say no, girls. You can't stop once you start, so every single little thing is forbidden because it will lead to fornication. I mean, this is crazy and stupid and self-defeating and often dangerous. So for girls in the witnesses, you can't say yes and you can't say no. So no matter what you do, you're wrong. That sounds about right. Gross.
What can a couple do when emotions escalate and they find themselves becoming dangerously intimate? One of them has to say or do something that breaks the mood. Deborah found herself alone with her date, who stopped the car in a lonely place to talk. When the emotions began to escalate, Deborah said to her date, "Isn't this necking? Shouldn't we stop?" That broke the mood. He immediately drove her home. To say no under these circumstances may be the hardest thing you have ever had to do, but as one 20-year-old woman who gave in to having sexual relations said, if you don't walk away, you'll be sorry.
These poor kids. I mean, damn. Does anyone actually use the term necking anymore? Intimacy isn't usually dangerous if you're doing it right, guys. And your religious institution has no business getting all up in your business like this. Shit like this makes these kids grow up with an inability to actually be intimate with anyone before or after the wedding. Poor Deborah and Deborah's boyfriend. You know, this should be the advice given if you want to throw ice water on the whole relationship. Do you think Deborah got a second date? I mean, I get it. If you don't want to make out with somebody, fine, just say so. But it doesn't have to be a big dramatic production. I feel like Deborah needed theme music and soft focus close-ups here.
Though viewed as old-fashioned by some, having a chaperone to accompany you on a date is still a good idea. It looks as if we can't be trusted, complain some couples. Perhaps. But is it wise to trust oneself? Proverbs 28 verse 26 bluntly states, "He that is trusting in his own heart is stupid, but he that is walking in wisdom is the one that will escape."
Oh, will you listen to this crap? This is really bad, guys. Don't trust yourself? Really? I mean, if you can't trust yourself, who can you trust? This is part of the regular, repetitive, almost constant conditioning that Jehovah's Witnesses receive. It's where they're being taught to override their own gut and listen to the Watchtower at all times. Follow Watchtower orders at all times, no matter what. It's crap like this that makes witnesses able to shun their family and friends, even their children, on command, without a second thought. It makes them able to think of non-Jehovah's Witnesses as non-human dead men walking who aren't really worth a damn unless they're interested in becoming Jehovah's Witnesses. They think everyone else in the world is going to be killed at Armageddon, and birds are going to eat our eyeballs right out of our skulls, and the witnesses are not the least bit sorry about that. And it all starts right here. It isn't wise to trust yourself.
Walk wisely by having someone else join you on a date. I really respect the fellow who brings his own chaperone. I know he is as interested as I am in being chased, revealed Deborah. It works no hardship, for when we want to say something privately, we just step out of earshot of the others. The protection it affords is worth any inconvenience.
Look, Deborah, I'm going to be straight with you. Any guy who brings his own chaperone on a date is not actually on a date with you. Three's a crowd, honey. And if he's bringing someone else along, that should tell you exactly how interested in you he is. And vice versa, guys. I think it's crazy that these people think it is so dangerous to be alone with someone you're dating, but they don't bat an eye at sending their kids to a stranger's door in the company of another kid or somebody else in the congregation that they really don't even know that well. It's crazy. The next chapter is called Masturbation. How serious is it? And I think I'll spare you the rehashing of the technical definition of chicken choking for now, but here's a fun paragraph.
Yes, often it is what one reads, watches, or listens to, as well as what one talks about or meditates on, that triggers masturbation. As one 25-year-old woman confessed, "I just couldn't seem to stop the habit. However, I used to read romance novels, and this contributed to the problem."
Guys, I don't understand why this is such a problem. I mean, the article even admits that masturbation is not even mentioned in the Bible at all, and they completely fail to explain why it's so wrong and bad and evil according to the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, this just doesn't make any sense. What's the problem?
Masturbation also instills certain attitudes that are mentally corrupting. When masturbating, a person is immersed in his or her own bodily sensations, totally self-centered.
This is such bullshit.
Sex becomes separated from love and is relegated to a reflex that releases tension. But God intended that sexual desires be satisfied in sexual relations, an expression of love between a man and his wife.
So who's to say that a person isn't immersed in his or her own bodily sensations when they're actually having sex with their husband or wife? I mean, you can't exactly feel the other person's bodily sensations, can you? And I hate to break it to these Victorian-era purity police, but sex and love aren't always synonymous. Yes, it's great when those things coincide, but many times they don't. And that by itself isn't necessarily a problem. If there wasn't so much guilt and drama created around it by these controlling, manipulative jerkwads, then
a masturbator may also tend to view the opposite sex as mere sex objects, tools for sexual satisfaction. Wrong attitudes taught by masturbation thus defile one's spirit, or dominant mental inclination. In some cases, the problems caused by masturbation persist even after marriage.
You know what leads people to view the opposite sex as mere sex objects? Treating them like second-class citizens, weaker vessels, lesser ones, silly, frivolous sisters, hens who have to wear tea towels on their head to be allowed to pray in front of their sons. What makes someone view the opposite sex as mere objects is indoctrination just like this. As in, you can't have sex until you get married, and you can't get married except within this very, very small pool of people, and you better hurry up because you might not be allowed to have sex after Armageddon, which is going to be here any minute. So Jehovah's Witnesses marry the first available person they come across that isn't utterly revolting or related to them, and then wonder why their marriages are miserable once the novelty of having sex wears off.
When a Christian succumbs to masturbation, his heart is often self-condemning.
Okay, I want you to think back in your early childhood, the first time you can remember ever eating candy. Do you remember how awesome it was? Now, did you immediately feel horribly guilty? No? Well, what about your first orgasm? If you were indoctrinated enough, you might have felt guilty about that. If you were a Jehovah's Witness, you probably did. But why? How is it any different from eating a piece of candy? I mean, it's pleasure generated by chemicals in your brain similar to those that come into play when you enjoy anything. Well, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're supposed to always feel just a little bit bad about any kind of pleasure. I mean, they'll never come out and admit that, but in my experience, it was definitely true. Anytime they talked about something being pleasurable, it was a sure sign that the other shoe was about to drop. Whether subtly or overtly, something that you liked was going to be bad or wrong or a conscience matter or something Christians should avoid. Look, it's not natural to feel guilty for feeling pleasure, especially when that pleasure is not hurting anyone or causing any problem whatsoever. And let's be honest, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, the brainwashing might have been enough to make you feel guilty about masturbating. But you didn't feel guilty enough to actually stop, did you? Nope. Now, the next chapter is entitled Masturbation. How can I fight the urge?
Suppose you accidentally see or hear something that is sexually stimulating.
Oh my, oh.
The Bible recommends prepare your minds for action. Be self-controlled. Exert your mind and reject the immoral thought. The arousal will soon die down. Rejecting bad thoughts is especially difficult, though, when one is alone at night. One young woman advises, the best thing to do is get right out of bed and get busy with some type of work, or maybe have a little snack, so that your mind turns to other things.
What a great idea! Replace your masturbation habit with a nighttime binge eating habit. That is surefire way to make sure that you never have to worry about falling into fornication, at least. Have the Watchtower writers completely never considered that people masturbate in places other than the bed? I mean, getting out of bed isn't necessarily going to stop you, is all I'm saying.
For example, if you find that engaging in certain activities, wearing tight-fitting clothing, or eating certain foods has caused you to become sexually stimulated, then by all means, avoid such.
Who is turned on by wearing tight clothing? Is that really a thing? Because that's usually just kind of uncomfortable. And eating certain foods? Like what? Hot dogs? Bratwurst? Kielbasa? Salami? I'm confused.
If your personal efforts are not successful, speak to someone who can help, such as a parent or a Christian elder. Young women may find it helpful to confide in a mature Christian woman.
Oh my God, please don't do this. Please don't. This is how horrible rumors get started, guys. This is how people end up marked for life in the congregation. Just don't do it. Look, they can't prove it. There aren't two witnesses, so they can't disfellowship you for it. Just keep your mouth shut. Your crotch is your business.
When we started dating, we didn't even hold hands or kiss. I just wanted to enjoy the pleasure of her company and talk, said one young man. However, she was very affectionate and would sit very close to me. In time, we did hold hands and kiss. This created within me an even stronger sex drive. It affected my thinking to the point that I wanted to be with her, not just to talk, but to hold her, touch her, and kiss. I couldn't get enough. I was literally going crazy with passion. At times, I would feel cheap and ashamed. Little wonder, then, that dating often culminates in illicit sexual relations.
No. This is totally normal. What is described here is biology working the way it's supposed to. There's nothing wrong here. There's nothing illicit about any of it. These two people are consenting adults, and if their physical relationship makes either of them feel cheap and ashamed, there probably needs to be another conversation happening here, maybe one that involves a therapist. I think some deprogramming might be needed.
Consider one young man's dilemma. I liked Kathy a lot at first. Well, I admit I talked her into doing some things she didn't think were right. Now I feel dirty because I've lost interest. How can I ditch Kathy without hurting her feelings? What a perplexing situation. And how would you feel if you were Kathy?
Okay, truth time again. This young man is a dick. Seriously, he's a total dick. Incidentally, Watchtower offers absolutely no advice on this situation. They simply use it to demonstrate how bad and dangerous teen relationships are. But y'all, you learn how to have relationships when you're a teenager. If you don't, you have to do that work when you're older. Let me tell you, the older you are, the harder it gets. Teen heartbreak is a normal part of life and is actually a good thing if it's handled right. It's a learning experience. It belongs to the people who are actually in the relationship, not the nosy sister in row 12 or the elders or their parents who want to be way too involved, like, I don't know, my mother. The other thing I notice about this situation with Kathy is that it's always over and over, this trope gets repeated in the Jehovah's Witness literature about how a male is not going to remain interested in a female after he has sex with her. And so the man moves on and the woman is devastated and has been used. She's been had. She's damaged goods. She's sloppy seconds. Nobody's going to want her anymore. And so she's the jilted lover all the time. It's just so wrong. I mean, do they ever realize that sometimes it's the other way around? That the girl might say, yeah, no, thanks, dude. I'm over you. Or maybe they decide to go their separate ways. This is just stupid. I'm just, ugh.
So-called platonic relationships, affectionate relationships between men and women into which the sexual element does not enter, are quite popular among youths. Claims 17-year-old Gregory, it's easier for me to talk to girls because they're usually more sympathetic and sensitive. Other youngsters argue that such friendships help them develop a more rounded-out personality. Nevertheless, a platonic friendship is often little more than a thinly disguised romance or a way to get attention from someone of the opposite sex without commitment. Oh my! And since feelings can easily change, there is a need for caution.
Oh, the witness's take on platonic relationships. Yes. Apparently, guys, it is impossible for people of the opposite sex to be friends without eventually humping each other uncontrollably. But wait, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, that born-in Jehovah's Witnesses have no exposure to peers of the opposite sex at all until they're married to someone. Because they're discouraging platonic relationships no friendships with the opposite sex. They're not allowed to be really close to anyone, so they know nothing about each other. And they believe the tripe that they're taught, these stereotyped gender roles that the witnesses zealously teach them. Women are submissive, weaker, stupider. They exist to serve men, and all they want out of life is a boy's attention. And men are the rule makers, the heads of the house, in charge of everything. They call all the shots. They get to decide what the feelings are in the relationship. Does anyone see the problem here? Now, there's plenty more crazy in the YPA book, but I'm going to leave some choice nuggets just in there for you to find in case you want to go read it yourself. It's chock full of terrible advice. Another fun thing about the Young People Ask book is that it was recommended for use during family studies. And it had these little sections at the end of each chapter here called questions for discussion. So these were things that you were expected to discuss after you've read through these cringeworthy articles with your siblings and your parents and, you know, whoever else might be studying with you. So let's look at some of these questions, shall we? How prevalent is premarital sex among the youths you know? Let's rat out our friends. Does this create any problems or pressures for you? You mean like my parents asking me to rat out all my friends during family study? What are some of the negative after effects of premarital sex? Do you know any youths who have suffered in these ways? Is birth control the answer to the problem of teen pregnancy? Yes. Why do some feel guilt and disappointment after engaging in illicit sex? Let's look at context clues. Illicit probably tells you why. Because they weren't supposed to do it? Oh, I love how these questions are worded too. They're very leading. They kind of, the way they're worded, lead you toward the desired answer, which I find hilarious. This is a great example of that. What do you think are the benefits of remaining virgin until marriage? What if you think that's a horrible idea? More questions for discussion. What are some things you can do that will help you treasure Jehovah's laws regarding sex? Got nothing. Why do you feel caution is necessary when dating? So your parents don't catch you having fun without a chaperone? What are some things a courting couple can do to protect themselves from falling into sexual immorality? I don't know, they could wear a harness. Don't climb on the handrails. What things can fuel the desire to masturbate? How serious a sin do you feel masturbation is? How does Jehovah view a youth who is putting up a fight against it, though perhaps having problems overcoming it? Okay, first of all, what if you don't feel like it's a sin? What are you supposed to say? And how are you supposed to know how Jehovah views anything? I mean, I guess you're supposed to regurgitate what Watchtower's told you in this book. Jehovah's not actually visible or present in any way, like he doesn't talk to you. You don't really know what his eyesight's like what his prescription is. Does he wear glasses or contacts? So you really don't have any way to know how he views you masturbating. That's creepy. What preventive measures might a youth take to lessen the temptation to indulge in masturbation? Chastity belt? What role does prayer play in overcoming this habit? Why is dating unwise for someone in the bloom of youth? Well, who do they think is supposed to date then? Grandmas? What are some problems that can develop when a boy and girl are just friends? Everybody thinks they're gonna fuck. How can you know if you're ready to date? It's your own decision. But of course, if you're a witness, the answer to this question is you're ready to get married. Well, that's it for this episode, folks. Check in another couple weeks for episode number 6 of Sex in the Watchtower. Until then, I'm Sister Fister. This is crazy.